Welcome to episode 3 of the Overwatch League Offseason News Recap 2023 edition. In today's video, I'll be covering all things free agency related from November 18th until the uploading of this video. We had a lot of teams make significant changes, so it's a pretty exciting day. Let's get started. The team I wanted to hone in on first is the Seoul Dynasty, who parted ways with Smurf, Iris, Fitz, and Vindaim so far. In a surprise turn of events, Seoul have allowed for every member of their team, with the exception of Prophet and Stalker, to enter the free agent market. It's no surprise that they'll hold on to somebody like Prophet, since he is kind of their face of the franchise, if you will, but the others may become us a bit more of a shock. But hold on. Don't get nervous just yet, Dynasty fans. While all these guys are entering the free agent market, there still is a possibility that some of them will come back. General Manager Arnold made an official statement citing that the APAC region is facing too much uncertainty to make any sort of move. For now, they'll step back and see what happens before making any serious commitments. So, to be fair to the players in the meantime, they're allowing them to explore their options and possibly make more money if they wish to. But why is it that Seoul are so afraid? Well, it likely has to do with the Blizzard situation in China. At the start of the new year, Blizzard's licensing agreements with NetEase officially came to a close, and as of right now, the two parties have failed to come to an agreement, meaning that the Blizzard game services will officially be suspended in that entire country. Considering that 4 of our franchises in APAC are located in China, that is problematic. There's lots of issues when it comes to competing and giving Chinese players a way to practice, and until they come up with a real solution, Seoul are going to sit back and wait. The league could be in a really weird spot, so might as well play your cards right. But for all we know, Seoul could have completely different faces on their roster, which is a shame when considering how good they were. But hey, on the bright side, some really excellent free agents are now entering the market. Smurf was MVP level for crying out loud and could literally be an option for any team in the league. I mean, could you imagine a world where he goes back to the Shock? Or what about the Gladiators? I mean, even Shanghai or Philly could be a shout. The fact that Smurf is a free man is horrifying. He is a once-in-a-lifetime talent that is hitting the market just to make this offseason even more insane than it already was. Then you have Fitz, who is still a pretty solid hit scan and can honestly thrive in more of a primary playmaking role. Again, I'm looking at like the Shock or the Gladiators, who do have holes at that position. Maybe he even goes to like a rebuilding team such as the alexyOWL to be their new star player. My point is, Fitz is definitely going to be sticking around. And let's not forget about those supports either, okay? Iris played well in multiple teams, showing that he is pretty versatile, and Vindaim might be one of the brightest rising stars in the league. If these guys all don't end up back on Seoul, I think there is a great chance they find new homes. The Seoul situation is definitely something to monitor. Some crazy things could go down over there. But Seoul are far from the only teams to clear out the books. Joining them will be the Boston Uprising, who after negotiations made the choice to not renew any of last year's roster. While disappointing, it's pretty easy to see why. Aside from a lot of teams starting over in general this year, Boston does have new management. And with new management comes different ideas and philosophies on how to build a team. Pri, their new general manager, probably wants to build this team from the ground up and make it something he can call his own. And it's not exactly like this Boston roster was some kind of world beater anyway, so not the biggest deal in the world. The real question becomes, did Boston lose anything of value here? I'd say that Mag, Punk, and Crimzo were all guys that were pretty talented and brought a lot to the table in terms of increasing a team's ceiling. I'd say there's a chance they could all find new homes because of that potential factor. Crimzo has been good on numerous teams. Punk was this team's unsung hero last year, and Mag just has a very high ceiling in general. With Crimzo being a Western talent, I'd expect a lot of rebuilding North American teams to take extreme interest in his services. With the rumor floating around that teams could be sticking to NA talent to avoid visa problems, I suppose that opens up a world where Seeker could also find a new home pretty easily. He didn't get a ridiculous amount of time to prove himself last year, but he's not exactly a bad option, especially if you're looking to build on a budget. The guys to probably be worried about here are Valentine and Victoria, as neither one of them were anything more than average, and this free agent class, especially for Eastern talent, is really loaded. They just have a lot to prove, and there's better options out there. So unless they awaken something out of nowhere, this free agency period could be pretty rough for this DPS duo. Next, we're going to have the Vancouver Titans, who also made some major roster changes by announcing that they officially parted ways with every single player with the exception of one. Aspire is going to be the lone survivor of the Titans roster purge, and given that he's North American and he was genuinely pretty good, I kind of think this makes sense. I could really see a world where Vancouver wants to build their future around him. Give him a better supporting cast, and he could be pretty darn dangerous. And since he has American Tornado roots, aka the greatest North American contenders team we've ever seen, there's definitely a possibility he could convince some of his former teammates like Kaluge, Hydron, Speedily, Ultraviolet, and or OG to come to Vancouver. I'm not saying it's any sort of guarantee, but that very well could be the game plan here. You have an empty roster and a guy that's friends with these guys, anything's possible. For the first time in a long time, I am genuinely excited to see what Vancouver does next. Some bright spots could finally be ahead of them if they play their cards right and they have at least a little bit of spending money on hand. They could make some serious upgrades, which is why I really don't mind them giving up on this core. Let's just think about it, like logically at least. Masa doesn't count because he's retired now, but who else was really worth salvaging from the old roster besides King? Their tanks weren't really anything super versatile or dominant, and their supports were probably just average at best. The Titans don't lose anything of value. And I think we could see that play out through free agency, as I'd be pretty surprised if more than 2 of those guys found a new home with how stacked things are. The one guy I have high hopes for in this situation is King though. He might have been a mid-season rookie pickup, but he really showed that he could hold his own in this league. And if he gets a better situation to prove himself, he could do some great things. Literally any of these rebuilding teams out in the West could benefit from his services, so don't be surprised if King gets another chance. But it doesn't end there for the roster dumpings. The Washington Justice will be joining in the festivities with a full dropping of their roster plus coaching staff. The Justice are looking to start fresh and perhaps become a Western or mixed roster again. There's been a lot of rumors out there that they don't want to spend a lot of money, so this makes a lot of sense. But at the same time, it's a little sad to see this era of the Justice come to an end like this. There was a lot of promise for this group back in the day, with Decay joining the roster in 2020. It started off so well with that miraculous playoff run too, and after getting people like Mag and Assassin on board during the offseason, they were expected to make deep playoff runs. What we got instead was 2 years of a team failing to capture the magic of their former glory. For the most part, the Decay era on Washington was a big-time disappointment. When they actually built a team around the guy, there was really nothing to show for it. Barely any playoff or tournament success, chokes everywhere, and no true accolades. There was absolutely nothing. They peaked literally right when it started, which is never a good thing. From high expectations to massive failures. It's a tough end to a story that was supposed to be a lot better. As for what the future holds for these Justice guys, I'm not too certain. A lot of them could have a really difficult time landing a new job, seeing as many of them weren't serious difference makers this year. The only guy from this group who truly gets any sort of real attention is Decay. He is the one and only potential star from that roster. Decay is not what he used to be, that's for sure, but he definitely still has it. He's flexible, he's explosive, and he can still be that guy. We all know it. It's tough to say if he can ever be like the true carry of a championship level team these days, but he's probably still worth taking a risk on. Honestly, he may not even need to be your number one guy. I could see a world where he thrives as a secondary playmaker. If he lands a spot on a good team, he could definitely put in the work. Like, he doesn't have to be that man. You could put him in a shared responsibility situation, or have him line up to someone that's maybe a little bit better right now. You have to remember though, Decay never really had a star lining up next to him at the damage roll before, so we don't really know what he can do. If you give him this though, there's going to be a lot less pressure on his shoulders, and if that happens, Decay might make a serious comeback in this league. Hypothetically, he could do pretty good on like a Shanghai or Atlanta, hell, maybe even rejoins the Gladiators. He's a very flexible player who most definitely still has a place in the Overwatch League. I'm sure he's going to find a new home before we know it. However, the rest of the guys feel pretty uncertain. It would be cool to see another one of them, at least one of them, get another chance, but it doesn't seem all that likely. To finish up the house cleaning section of this video, the Toronto Defiant announced that they're letting go of Hotba, Finale, and Chorong, which officially marks the beginning of a brand new era in this city yet again. Now, in all honesty, Chorong was like the one guy of somewhat high value they lost here, but it really doesn't matter. The big pieces were already gone, and management made it very known that this roster took its course in their eyes. If that's the case, what can you really do? For Defiant fans, this is really tough because you finally thought you had something, but this year has just been really brutal for a lot of teams, so you're kind of stuck. Coach Casores is going to build a team in his image now, and from what we've heard in interviews, he's not even ruling out the possibility of a mixed roster. He knows a fair bit of Korean apparently, and seems pretty comfortable with the idea. So while a new beginning is very frustrating, there could be some promise, especially if Casores can lure in some of his former shock buddies. On the other side of it, I'd say that both Hotba and Chorong could be seen as a desirable free agent. A reliable veteran like Hotba and a high potential support player like Chorong is always going to draw some eyes. Hotba, I mean, he always finds a way to stick around in this league. He's not even the greatest tank player out there, but he just brings something valuable that teams really seem to like. And Chorong, he could very well sneak his way onto a top roster, especially for those that are looking to upgrade the main support position. Look at the Outlaws, maybe even like the Shock, let's say, the Atlanta Reign, Florida Mayhem, Philly Fusion, Shanghai Dragons, even Seoul if they don't bring back Vindaim. There's going to be a lot of teams that could probably end up benefiting from this guy's services. It'll be very interesting to see how many of the former Toronto players end up finding homes, but until that day, we're going to leave the Toronto talks here. The final part of the agenda for today will be to update you on the free agency start date. The original date was set for November 19th, but since then that has changed to December 2nd. In all likelihood, it has to do with the chaos of the East right now. The whole licensing issue in China is a real problem, so pretty much every team out there has to wait and see what the plan is. It's just a horrible idea to spend a significant sum of money when things are very uncertain. Arnold of the Dynasty said it the best. You really can't invest like you normally would when you don't know what's happening. The league themselves were pretty blindsided by this, so it's a tough situation for everybody involved. With that said, moving the start of free agency until after a plan is made is the fairest way to approach this. Teams need to understand the landscape of the league and if there's any sort of real significant changes on the way. I mean, think about the Dragons. They are literally owned by NetEase. The whole situation is very stressful and needs time to resolve before we can push forward. So for that, I say the league made the right choice. It's disappointing because this free agency class is extremely hype, but it's important to wait just to make sure that the league is in the best possible place it can be. And I'll be sure to give you guys updates on the situation as they happen, but for now, we're going to close it there and see what goes on over the next couple of weeks. So with that said, I hope you enjoyed today's Overwatch League off-season news recap. If you did, be sure to give this video a like and subscribe to my channel if you're new if you want to stay up to date with all things Overwatch League news related. And be sure to let me know what you think of all of this down in the comments below. What can the league do to try and resolve these problems? And what do you think about all of these free agents hitting the market? Let me know down below. And until next time, this is ATP, signing out. Peace.